Three Birds Free on Lake Huron by Dennis M. Morrison. Part 6. Chapter 10 and Conclusion. Chapter 10. At Sault Ste. Marie. We got to Sault Ste. Marie a little after noon. What a busy place it was, too. There were horses and buggies and buckboards and delivery wagons all over the place. Bernie and me walked along wondering where in the world to begin looking for that big old Manitou tree. There was a large saloon building and all sorts of men going in and out. It sure was a loud place with piano music filling the air. As we walked by, a short man with a mustache came flying out the door, his arms waving wildly in the air, and another man looked at him in surprise and said, "What's gotten hold of you, Jacques?" Judging by the way the little man spoke, I figured he was either French or maybe French-Canadian, but he sure was all excited as he said to the other man, "I was playing cards in there, and I see the devil. See devil is in there playing blackjack." And the other man laughed real hard and said, "Jacques, you've been drinking too much. The only devil in there is at the bottom of a bottle that you polished off." "No, no, no, no," the little man said, waving his hands. "We was playing blackjack, and I dropped a card on the floor. When I picked it up, I saw that dealer, and he had no shoes on, and he had no feet, just cloven hoofs like a pig or a cow. I tell you, I see the devil." With that, the little man ran off down the road, swearing he'd never go back in that saloon. And the other man looked at us and said, "That old Frenchman gets a little crazy when he's been drinking." "Maybe, but you just never know," I said. "Some people still believe Manitous walk the earth. Maybe that's what he saw in the saloon." The man became serious all of a sudden. "Manitous? Well, yes, they are about. The woods here are full of them. Old Indian spirits they are. There are some places white folk should never go in the woods around here." And then Bernie asked, "Well, say, do you know about an old Manitou tree around here? A place where the Indians leave offerings?" "Do I ever? And a more spooky place I've never seen in my entire adult life." I was feeling all excited about that, and I blurted out, "Can you take us there, or at least tell us how to get there?" "No," he shook his head. "That ain't no place for kids. Why would you want to go there?" We told him about our missing dad and how we were supposed to find that tree, and we would find our dad. When we told him that our dad was missing, he looked like he was about ready to cry. Now that makes it a whole different story. Old Jacob McFly here will help you. That's me, Jacob McFly, but you boys can call me Jake. You come with me, and later I'll take you to the tree, or at least get you going in the right direction. I weren't too sure about going with this burly old man. He was kind of scary looking, with no neck. His head just sort of looked like it sat on his shoulders. He was bald except for his fuzzy his fuzzy eyebrow stuff and the fuzz coming out of his ears. Besides, Dad and Mama had always warned us about staying away from folks we didn't know, and even though he seemed like he wanted to help, I just didn't feel right about it. But Bernie, well, he was all gung-ho to get going with Jake. "Come on, Joey, maybe we'll find Dad yet today." Well, I still didn't feel right about going with Jake, and I grabbed Bernie and told him so. He kind of thought about it for a second or two, and then he turned to Jake and said, "Could you maybe just tell us where to go, Mr. McFly?" "Well, sure, I suppose, but old Jake wouldn't never hurt no youngsters. I love kids, but I'll tell you where to go." He pointed across the bridge and said, You go out of town on Market Street, and you keep on walking till you come to Silver Lake. You go along the north shore, and you keep walking maybe 4 or 5 miles, and you'll find that old tree all piled with offerings." "Gee, thanks, Jake," I said, and Bernie and me turned and was off on our way looking for the tree. But there was still something about old Jake I didn't like at all. He seemed nice enough, and what it was I just couldn't put my finger on. But there was something about him. As me and my brother walked away, I told him how I was feeling. "Aw, Joey, you just have the jitters. You have that otter bag in your knapsack, and that disc Chief Tamaqua said would protect us when he gave it to us on the island. There ain't nothing going to happen to us. He just wanted to help, that's all." I kind of felt better, 'cause I had forgotten all about the disc, but just to make sure I could get at it quick, I took it out of my knapsack and put it in my pants pocket. Then before we got to walking, 'cause we sure had a long ways to go, I kind of wondered if we would make it before dark, being that we didn't bring our tent and had no place to stay, but we always seemed to find a place, so I put my mind to rest. Once we got out of town, there weren't many people around. It sure was a hot day again, and I was getting plenty thirsty, plenty fast. When we got to Silver Lake, we went down to the shore, cupped our hands, and we drank and drank. Why, I bet we lowered that lake level by at least 2 feet. When I looked up from the water, I spotted a man way off in the distance watching us. But even at that far away, I could recognize that sort of misshapen form. I was sure it was old Jake McFly, and I told Bernie, and by the time he looked up, the man was gone. But why would Jake be following us? "You're just seeing things, little fox," Bernie said to me. "There ain't no one following us." Well, Bernie might have been sure of that, but I weren't, and I was going to be watching close. We found the path Jake had told us about, and by the time it was nigh into 5 o'clock, according to the sun in the sky. Dad and Grandpa both had taught us a long time ago about telling time from the sun. We still had a few hours of daylight left, so we pushed on. The trail got pretty narrow and was covered with brown pine needles. Looked like no one hardly ever used it. Then I thought of something. What if Jake had given us the wrong directions? What if for some reason he was heading us away from the tree? I didn't say nothing to Bernie, 'cause he'd have thought I was just imagining things again. So we kept on down that trail, but I was pretty sure we was being watched, and I was also pretty sure it was Jake doing the watching. By and by, we didn't come to no tree, but we did happen upon an old shack, and there was some small outbuildings too. We knocked on the door of the shack, but there weren't no answer. We stuck our heads in, and boy, what a mess. It looked like some old barnyard that pigs lived in. Then we looked through the outbuildings. The bigger one we went in thinking it might be a place where we could spend the night. We weren't in there only a minute, and the door behind us was slammed shut and bolted into place. We heard a man laughing then. "Old Jake got you two now, and just like I promised, I'm going to take care of you kids. Yeah, I'm going to take care of you both real good." Bernie and me threw ourselves against the door, but it weren't no use. We was blocked in, and we couldn't see no way out of there. I wanted to tell Bernie I told you so, but didn't figure right then it was a good time. Then my brother thought it might be a good time to use that disc Tamaqua had given us, but I felt we should save it just a bit longer. And I was probably right, 'cause as I looked out through the boards, I saw old Jake talking to a man dressed in a black suit. But my, that man looked familiar. Then it hit me. I knew where I'd seen him before. That was the shaman man that burned up in the cemetery in Mankato. But here he was now. How could that be, unless he really were one of the evil Manitus? Him and Jake were standing there talking, and Jake was pointing over towards where we were locked up. Bernie and me couldn't believe our eyes, 'cause that man didn't have no shoes on, and sure as all get out, he had hoofs for feet. That must have been who the Frenchman had seen, and now I was sure about him, and the shaman being an evil spirit. The man with the weird feet made a cutting motion at his throat with his hands as he looked over at us. Then they both laughed. The man left, and I was scared again about what was going to happen. It was getting dark out. We was plenty hungry, and we still didn't know where the Manitou tree was at. Bernie and me sat down on the dirt floor and tried to figure out what we should do. It weren't long, and we heard a scratching at the back of the building. It was coming from outside, and sounded like digging. We got up, went over to the wall, and sure enough, there was a hole being dug. By who? In the darkness it was impossible to tell, but a voice said, "Don't just stand there, get digging from your side." Being that we had someone willing to help us, Bernie and I got down there and started doing our part. Let me tell you, we was both pretty surprised when we got out and found that it was one of my Fox brothers that was helping us. And we go out just in the nick of time, because Jake was calling to us and was on his way to get us. Lord knows what he might have done if he had. The fox said, "There's no time to lose. Follow me, and I'll lead you to the Manitou tree." The fox took off through the darkness, and we followed close behind. He sure enough was hard to keep up with, but knowing old Jake was back there seemed to give me and Bernie both a little extra get up and go into our steps. Boy, someone sure did not want us to get to that old Manitou tree, 'cause right in front of us was old Jake. He had just appeared out of nowhere. I knew then that he was a spirit too. Then, right before our eyes, he started to change, and he became a big bear with glowing red eyes and fire shooting out of his nose. Old Jake was sure enough a bear walker. I remembered that bear walker lady by the lighthouse, and how she said no bear walker would ever hurt us, so I mustered up all my courage and started walking towards that fearsome beast. "What the heck are you doing, Joey? Get back here," Bernie called. But I kept on a-going, and when I was just about up to that critter, I picked up a big old stick and smacked him right across the fire-breathing nose. I didn't do it only once, but kept doing it over and over and over till he let out an angry roar and turned tail and ran. The fox sat there laughing so hard that he rolled over backwards onto his belly. Bernie and I joined with the laughing, but all that merriment was short-lived because the fellow in the black suit with the hoof feet, well, he stepped right out of the darkness and in front of us. The fox started growling at him, but the man in black paid him no mind. You can't take care of me with some old stick. I'll make sure you two never make it to that tree, because I am the red gibbous, and my father is the evil one. He wants for me to destroy you two. This man, or gibbous, began to change too. He grew very large, very ugly, and very red, and he was painted all different colors of war paint. He began to whoop and holler and dance around like he'd taken leave of his senses. Then his fingertips started shooting out bolts of blue lightning, and he aimed them at us. They kept striking all around Bernie and me and exploding anything they hit. I couldn't think of nothing to do, so I took that disc out of my pocket and held it up high in the air. He shot a bolt of lightning from his finger, and it struck the disc, bounced off, and hit him. The shock sent him flying through the air, and then when he hit the ground, there just weren't nothing left of that old red Jeebus. "Joey, look at the disc," Bernie said. It laid on the ground in 5 pieces. I picked them up and put them in my pocket and gave thanks for our safety. I was hoping now we could get to that tree, and the fox started leading us through the woods again. We went for what seemed a long ways before we came to a hill that was all dark against the night sky, and on that hill was a tree that looked so very ancient. Its branches reached up into the night sky, and the fox said to us, "There is what you seek. Go now to the tree." Bernie and I rushed ahead, and when we got to it, sure enough, it was all surrounded by offerings. In fact, the hill itself was made up of all offerings that had been left for the tree. "And what have you brought for me?" the tree asked. And Bernie and me took a pinch of tobacco and laid it on one of the pots that someone had left as an offering. Then the tree said, "Ah, a very fine gift. Now what is it you seek?" I spoke up. "We met your sister tree on the Great Turtle, and she told us we would find our dad here. Can you help us find our dad?" The tree was silent for a moment, and then said, "So you have come here seeking your father? Well, yes. I guess I can help you. That would be very nice of me, wouldn't it?" Bernie and me both agreed that it would be, and then she said, "Well, turn around and look behind you, and there is what you seek." Bernie and me turned around, and there was Dad, all smiles, with his arms held out. "Dad!" we both cried, and then ran to him. We all three had our arms around each other, and he said, "My boys, I've missed you so much. I'm sorry that I left you, but there was no choice. It was the only way." "The only way for what?" I asked, and then Bernie added, "We thought sure you'd been killed or something." There is a lot of time to explain to you both, an awful lot, and a lot of things to explain in that time, and I will, but not tonight. Tonight we must sleep, and in the morning I will tell you all I can. Come on, just a ways over the woods I built a lodge, and that is where we'll sleep. So Dad led us to the lodge he'd built, and it was a dandy one at that. We all three went in, and there before the flaming hearth were 3 beds of fur on the ground, and we all hugged again, and then, exhausted, got under the furs and quickly went to sleep. I slept soundly, but I had lots of dreams again. I dreamt about old Jake and that evil red gibbous. They was after Bernie and me. It was a scary dream, but looking back on everything that had happened to us, well, all that seemed sort of dreamlike too. And by the time my brother and me woke up, Dad had a fire going and breakfast ready. We ate pancakes of cattail flour and acorns with maple syrup on them. I was really getting to like all the wild foods that we were eating on this trip. And after breakfast, we sat there, and Dad finally said, "I know you are both wondering what I have to tell you. Let me begin by saying we are part Indian. You both look surprised, but your great-grandfather was a full-blooded Chippewa chief." "Why didn't you ever tell us before, Dad?" I asked. "Well, it's something your mama felt you shouldn't know till you were old enough to understand. She wanted to raise you as Christians, and, well, that was all right with me, but I made a deal with her that when I felt you two were old enough, I would take you out and teach you about your heritage." "And Mama was okay with that?" Bernie asked. "No, not really, but she loves me and accepts what I am, which is part of what you both are. I am proud of who I am and what I am, just as you two should be proud of where our people are from. I want Tesha to be also, but hers must wait a while longer. You have 2 backgrounds, and they are both good." But I was curious. "Why now, Dad? Why didn't you tell us before?" "Because you weren't old enough," he replied. "But now it's time for you boys to strike out on your own and find your own Manitus who will help and guide you through your life. Think of it as a guardian angel, for I can see no difference. Little Fox, you have found yours. Brave Cloud, you haven't. The time is different for each boy. Soon you will. Maybe before we return home, and maybe not. Well, is that why the spirits like us so well? I inquired. Yes, but the spirits love everyone. Indian people just see them more than other people because we accept that they are all around us, and that it is all right to talk with them and to let them be part of our lives. You see, Dad said, this summer is really a summer of spirits, for those great ones of old have visited our land and waters, and they are still here. Some will stay, others will return to the land of the spirits. But what better time could there have been to show you two boys about what our people believe? What better time to learn about those spirit forces that guide our lives? But Dad, I asked, will our people, the Indian people, return to worshiping the old ones like they want? Well, there is really only one way. There really is only one they are to worship, and that is Gitchimanitu, the Father Creator. There will always be a few of the people who worship him in truth and spirit. But I believe Gitchimanitu belongs not only to us anymore, but to all people, and all people belong to him. And Bernie asked, well, then he is like the God Mama has taught us about and to worship. If you are asking, are they one and the same? Well, I can't say for sure, Bernie, but I believe they are, and we just worship him in a different way. Well, that's a pretty good way to look at it, I said. I have another question, though, Bernie said, and then asked. Waki and Tamakwa said that Lightning Sun was someone very important to Joey and me. Why is that, Dad? Why is Lightning Sun so important to us? Lightning Sun, Dad began, was important to all Indians for what Manabazo did through him. But he is important to us because you two and I are direct descendants of that great warrior brave. That is why the Jeebus wanted to keep you from getting to the tree and finding me. If he could have stopped you two from knowing about your heritage, it would have been a boot in the butt to Manabazo, so to speak. Also, you two are the last male descendants of Lightning Sun, and the evil one would would have looked on your destruction as a victory over Gitchimanitu and Manabazo. But you two had to do this without my help, only the spirits to guide you. Bernie and me both understood then what had been going on, and I think we both felt pretty proud inside about our family and its heritage. Conclusion. Well, like I said in the beginning, I'm 75 years old now, and I'll never forget the summer and all that I'd learned. Bernie, Dad, and me spent a couple of weeks up in those woods at Sault Ste. Marie before we started home. We had one final adventure on the Great Turtle, and that was on our way back home. We stopped there as many Indians were gathering because they felt it was time for Gitchimanitu to visit. I remember sitting there in the woods with at least 200 other Indians as this real dense fog swept up over the island and us. We could hear voices in that fog, and I knew the spirits were there with us. Don't know if it was the Father Creator or not, but there sure was spirits there. When we returned home, life was never quite the same again for me. I continued following the Indian traditions that my dad taught me, but I also followed the Christian traditions of my mom. Bernie, well, he never did get his own Manitou, probably because he started going to church regular and just didn't have much interest in the Indian way of things. Natasha, there was a surprise, because she went on to become a school teacher and then found work on an Indian reservation in Upper Michigan. She was proud of her work teaching those kids that had so little. She looked on each of them as they were her own brother and sisters. Mama? Well, Mama passed away in 1897, which was still pretty young. Dad never remarried. In fact, he sold the mercantile and took to living in the woods away from society. He built himself a sturdy little lodge and spent most of the rest of his days there. Dad passed away in 1925. He was an old man, but happy when he died. As he laid there on his bed of animal skins, my sister, brother, and me by his side, he said he could see Mama standing there with us, waiting to take him home with her, and he passed with a smile on his face. Me? Well, that summer changed my life to be sure. I became a writer, but most of my writing was done in the solitude of the woods, where I could hear the many spirits of nature around me, singing their sweet songs to me and letting my mind and soul be at peace. Now, of course, I live in this old house looking over Lake Huron, but in spring, summer, and fall, there's hardly a night goes by that I don't sleep out here and wait for Mama and Dad to come and take me home with them to be with Tesha and Bernie too. Yep, I had a good life and hope there's still lots more of good things to come, but I'll have it good then too. Yes, sir. I'll have it good then, too. The end.